Chapter 35, The Plan. All day long we ate up the road through Montana. It hadn't looked so far on the map, but it was all mountains. We started in the foothills of the Rockies as we left Yellowstone, and all day we climbed up and down. Sometimes the road snaked along the side of a cliff. The only thing between us was a sharp drop and a piddly railing. Often we sailed around bends and came face to face with a camping trailer swinging its wide body around the curve. "These roads are a dinger," Grant said, but he was like a little kid riding a hobby horse. "Giddy ap," he yelled. "Get a move on," he said, encouraging the car up the hill. "Yee-haw," he said as he swept down the other side. I felt as if I was being torn in two pieces. Half of me was oogling the scenery. I had to admit that it was pretty, maybe prettier than Bybanks. Trees and rocks and mountains, rivers and flowers, deer and moose and rabbits. It was an amazing country, an enormous country. But the other half of me was quivering pile of jelly. I could see our car bursting through the railing and plunging down the cliff. As we approached each curve, I could see us smashing straight into the truck camper. Every time I saw a bus, I watched it sway. I watched its tires spin dangerously close to the gravel on the road's edge. I watched it plunge on, eating up the road, defying those curves. Graham sat quietly with her hands folded in her lap. I thought she might be asleep, especially after staying awake all night, but she didn't. She wanted to hear about PB. So all day long, as I took in the scenery and I imagined us in 1,000 accidents, and as I prayed underneath it all to the trees whizzing by, I talked about PB. I wanted to tell it all today. I wanted to finish it. On the 5th day after Mr. Berkway appeared at Phoebe's house and told us about Mr. Cadaver, Phoebe and I put our plan into motion. We were going to track down Sergeant Bickle's son and, according to Phoebe, discover the whereabouts of Phoebe's mother. I wasn't positive that Sergeant Bickle's son was a lunatic, and I wasn't convinced that he would lead us to Phoebe's mother, but enough of Phoebe's tale had been transplanted into my brain so that I was caught up in this plan. Like Phoebe, I was ready to take some action. We could hardly sit still all day at school. Phoebe especially was all fired up. She was worried too. She was afraid we might not discover her mother alive, and I was beginning to share that fear. At school, everyone was still buzzing about the journal readings. Everyone wanted to know who had written about the murder. Alex avoided Mary Lou because of what she had said about him being a pink jerk, and Mary Lou avoided Beth Ann because of what Beth Ann had written about her chicken kisses. Megan and Christy taunted Beth Ann with, "Did you really tell Mary Lou that kisses tasted like chicken? Did she really believe you?" And they taunted me with, "Do you really kiss trees? Didn't you know you're supposed to kiss boys?" In English class, everyone badgered Mr. Berkway to finish reading the journal entry he had begun yesterday, the one about Mrs. Corpse and the body, but Mr. Berkway did not read any more journals. Instead, he apologized for hurting people's feelings by reading their private thoughts aloud, and he sent us to the library. There, Ben trailed me. If I looked in the fiction section, he was right beside me. If I moved over to examine the magazines, there he was, flipping through one as well. Once his face made contact with my shoulder. He was definitely trying to plant a kiss on me. I knew he was, but there was nothing I could do about it. I could not help it where he aimed his mouth in my direction. My body was already moving away. I needed a little warning. I tried remaining completely still for several consecutive minutes, and during those minutes I detected Ben leaning slightly toward me several times. Each time, however, he drew back as if something were controlling him by an invisible thread. Across the library, Beth Ann called, "Sal, there's a spider. Oh, Sal, kill it." When the final bell rang, Phoebe and I were out of the school like a shot. At Phoebe's house, we examined the telephone directory. "We gotta hurry," Phoebe said, "before Prudence or my father comes home." There were 6 Bickles listed in the directory. We took turns. Each time we'd ask for Sergeant Bickle. The first 2 people said we must have the wrong number. The 3rd number we dialed was busy, and the 4th, no answer. The 5th was answered by a crotchety woman who said, "I don't know any sergeants." And the 6th number was answered by an elderly man who must have been lonely because he talked on and on about once knowing a Sergeant Freeman in the war, but that was back in 1944. He also knew a Sergeant Bones and a Sergeant Dowdy, but he did not know about Sergeant Bickle. "What are we going to do?" Phoebe wailed. Prudence will be home any minute, and we still don't know which is the right Bickle. The busy number was still busy. The previously unanswered one rang and rang, and just as Phoebe was about to hang up, she heard a voice. Hello? She said, May I speak with Sergeant Bickle, please? There was a pause, and she listened. He's still at work. Phoebe was jumping up and down. Thank you, she said, trying to make her voice sound serious. I'll call later. No message. Thank you. Yes, she said when she hung up. Yes, yes, yes. She was hugging me half to death. You'll have to do the phase 2 tonight. That night, while my father was at Margaret's, I phoned the Bickles. I prayed that Sergeant Bickle wouldn't answer, but I prepared to disguise my voice in case he did. The phone rang and rang. I hung up. I rehearsed my voice and what I would say. I tried again. On the 7th ring, the phone answered. It was Sergeant Bickle. My name is Susan Longfellow, I said. I'm a friend of your son's. I was wondering if I might speak with him. I prayed and prayed that he only had one son. He isn't here, Sergeant Bickle said. Would you like to leave a message? Do you know when he'll be home? There was a pause. How did you say you know my son? This made me nervous. How do I know your son? Well, that's a very long story. I basically, the way I know him is, actually, this is a little embarrassing to admit. My hands were sweating so much I could hardly hang on to the phone. The library. Yes, I know him from the library, and he loaned me a book, but I lost the book. Maybe you should explain this all to him, Sergeant Bickle said. Yes, maybe I should do that. I wonder why he gave you this phone number, he said. I wonder why he didn't give you his phone number at school. At school? Actually, the thing is, I think he did give me that number too, but I lost it. You sure lose a lot of things. Would you like his number at school? Yes, I said. Or better yet, maybe you could give me his address and I'll just send him the book. I thought you said you lost the book. Actually, yes. I'm hoping to find it. I see, he said. Just a minute. There was a muffled pause and he put his hand over the receiver and called, Honey, where's Mike's address? Mike, brilliant, a name. I felt like a chief inspector. I felt like I had just discovered the most important clue in the criminal investigation of the century. To top it off, Sergeant Bickle gave me Mike's address. I was sorely tempted to end the conversation by informing Sergeant Bickle that his son was a potential lunatic, but I refrained. I thanked him and immediately phoned Phoebe. You're brilliant, she said. Tomorrow we nail Mike the lunatic.